What's going on, everybody? It's Will Kern from Endless Events, and welcome back to another Whiteboard Wednesday. And today we're talking about how do video switchers work. A video switcher is a piece of equipment that's very common in corporate events and any type of video broadcast at all. If you chances are, if you have laptops or cameras, chances are you have a video switcher at your event, whether you knew that or not. But I want to educate you a little bit on how they work, because there's a couple questions we get all the time from planners for how they work, what do you need it for, and hey, when do we need to upgrade to the next level for a more expensive one? And I want to kind of explain how they simply work and how they get more complex so you can understand when do you need to bring in that, big gun of an awesome switcher for your next event. So let's talk about switchers and what they do. A video switcher looks something like this. This is an amazing artist representation of what a video switcher looks like. You have some knobs and buttons and most of the stuff you don't even have to worry about. But what you do know is that essentially on the back of it has a bunch of inputs, similar to kind of a TV where you have HDMI inputs, you have maybe VGA inputs or maybe composite, BNC. I think we've done a Whiteboard Wednesday on video cables. If we haven't, that's probably going to be coming out real soon. But there's all these different types of video cables. Everything kind of plugs into it. Most commonly you'll see is things like laptops. So for example, if you have two presenting laptops, if you have one presenter going up, plugging in their own laptop, then the next presenter wants to queue up their laptop, get it plugged in, it allows you to hook up those multiple sources. Or you can also bring in things like cameras as well, which is really cool. And basically bring in these multiple sources, and as the title implies, they basically allow you to switch between them. You can do things like nice fades, you can do those like nice 80s like transitions where it does like a star, like basically anytime you see like a fade and a transition in between two different video sources like laptops or cameras, you will basically see a video switcher. So with me so far? All right, now we're gonna get a little bit more complicated. So that's the basics of a switcher. Every switcher has different features and capabilities and everything like that. Some, for example, if you have 30 different laptops being plugged into it, you might need a little bit bigger of a switcher, right? Or if you're using a certain type of camera, you might need a certain type of switcher. There's a bunch of different ways you can use this as well. One of the cool features that a lot of switchers have, though, is not only can you bring in laptops and cameras and different input sources, you can technically bring like a DVD player in, you can plug in like live TV, direct TV box if you wanted to, you can do a lot of different things in there. But what's also cool is a lot of them allow you to also bring in graphics. And traditionally what we usually do if you're running graphics, for example a PowerPoint or you're showing a video content, you're usually going to play that off of a laptop running a software to be able to do that. However, if you just want to, for example, just show a logo. So for example, a very basic setup we'll even see for very small events is that if you have one laptop running all the presentations and each one's broken up and you have to close PowerPoint and open up the next one, what's great is you can always transition back to the graphic, which you actually load into the switcher. And what's great about that is that you can have a very professional presentation. We've all seen it before where you've been in a presentation, one presentation gets done, they hit escape on PowerPoint, and it goes to the no signal, or they unplug the laptop, it goes to no signal, or let's say you can see them on screen, opening the next presentation, you see email notifications pop up. What's great about the graphic is you can always kick over to it. We always use like the term, we're going to dump to the graphic if we need to. You can always go to the graphic while you're working on something else. Or if there's a technicality or an issue with, for example, the laptop freezes or has an issue, you can always dump to the graphic. So a lot of switchers will have the ability for you to load logos and a graphic and things like that, sometimes up to 2, 3, 4 different graphics into it, and use it as one of these sources. Pretty neat, right? It allows you to take a little bit more professionalism when it comes to your event to make it run just a little bit more smooth. If you are running currently like a breakout room or something like that, and you're used to seeing that unplug and goes to no signal, if you want to make it run a little bit clearer, grab a video switcher, and it'll allow you to clean it up just a little bit. What's also great is if you are bringing in things like cameras, it allows you to do things like, for example, not only just have one camera shot, you can go between one camera shot and a laptop. You can also then switch between multiple cameras as well. So you can see how it just adds a little bit of versatility to it. And these video switchers that we're using for a lot of our productions is the same stuff that you'll see on TV, which is really, really cool and highly professional. All right, so what's great about this is you do all the switching, and then what happens is the outputs. And that's where the most common question we usually get when it comes to a video switcher comes in. So let's start with the basics, right? Most traditional switchers will have one, maybe two outputs. And what we mean by outputs is that you take all the switching, all the, you're going to laptop, things like that, then it's going to output, and you're going to have a cable that then runs to your projector/TV. We'll call that your main output, right? In most cases, for example, if you have a two-screen setup, very common in corporate events, you may have one screen to the left of the presenter and the one to the right. Usually what we'll do is we'll go out of the switcher, and then we use a box, a little splitter box. We call it a distribution amplifier. We use a box like that to split the video signal and then go to each projector. So if you have two projectors and you want the same thing on each one, we go one cable that runs all the way from the back of the room all the way to behind the stage, splits into two cables, and then goes to each projector. And you get what's called a duplicate view. With me so far? So what that allows is, essentially because you're splitting it at that box and sending the same thing to both once, that's really easy to do. Also really common is that, for example, is when we see a setup like this, you might have a downstage monitor. We're going to do definitely a video on downstage monitors and how they make your event a lot smoother. But let's say, for example, you want to have a downstage monitor at the edge of the stage, for example. Man, I don't even think that's in frame. But let's say you have that monitor that's facing back towards the stage so the presenter can see their presentations and they can see what they're talking about. That's what a downstage monitor do. What we'll also do is then we'll split it off and we can split that too. Again, duplicate screens, very easy to do, very inexpensive. So what's also great is a lot of switchers will also have this other output as well though. We call this the preview output. So a lot of times it's done in what's called multi-view, and you kind of see this in security cams where you see lots of different cameras on one single screen. It has kind of like a grid system where you can pick and pull and put it in there, kind of like the way this looks. That can do very, very easy to do, and a lot of switchers will have that output as well. Sometimes though, you'll get lucky. And a switcher that you might be using, for example, a brand called Blackmagic has what's called an aux output. This is extremely helpful for AV people because what the aux output is like another output. You have another cable that kind of comes off of it. And what's great is, for example, this could be chosen to be output 1, and this is output 2. So what's great about that is it's going to allow us to do what's over here when we have different sources going to different outputs. And the most common thing that we get as a question when we get from planners is, okay, we have this setup. We have presentation going to left and right of the screen and down to the stage. What happens if I want camera on this one? And we'll call this Y, for example. Now all of a sudden, it's not duplicate of X. Now there's a Y involved. A completely different signal going to that. Ooh, yikes. Or also common, what if I want, for example, a different source going to the downstage monitor, right? Oh, I want presenter view, or I want them to be able to see the Q&A software, but I want to keep their presentation up on the screen. Well, that's when you're going to need different outputs. And that's where this kind of secondary output comes in. You're lucky that there are some switchers that are inexpensive enough that allow you to do this two-output device. For example, you have the main output and then maybe one goes to the auxiliary, right? However, also really common is that we want 3 sources. I've seen this before where, for example, let's say you have a 4-screen, let's say we have this. Let's start with a 3-screen setup, right? You have the X going, or this is a 3-screen setup. Let's say this is X, Y, and the third thing is the downstage monitor is Z. You have output 1, output 2, output 3. Well, then you need 3 different outputs from your switcher. When you get to 2, some switchers can do that. When you get to 3, a lot of switchers don't have that, and that's when you start to get into the expensive equipment. So that's something to always keep in mind. If you want the ability to do these different sources, it gets expensive very, very quickly. So when you get into these different sources, I've seen it before where clients will say, well, what if we want to do, for example, we want to have one video playing on this one, another video playing on this one, another video playing on this one, and another 4 different sources go out to the screens. That's when you get into very, very expensive equipment. That's when you get into things, for example, there's the Encore switching system. There's also, you may have heard of the Spider system as well. These are very advanced, very expensive systems to be able to do this sort of stuff. And I know probably all the AV people in the comments are raving, going, well, there's this one switcher that does that. We're just talking about commonly available equipment for all events that you can get in almost every market. But what's great is that you do need one of these advanced systems to be able to, but what's so cool about it is that you can do things like, for example, on those switchers, is you can make it so it's the same source goes to all 4 screens. You can make it so there's a different source going to every screen. A lot of really cool stuff. But to recap, the thing to keep in mind, we got really technical there really fast, and I apologize, but it's that if you want to have a lot of different sources, it's going to get expensive. So if you want to keep it simple and you want to make it so you just have, screen X and screen X, super duper easy, really inexpensive to do. You want to get Q, X, Y, Z, starts to get a little bit more expensive to be able to do that because this is the element that we're talking about, the switcher. you need a more robust switcher to be able to do that things. The thing to keep in mind too, as well as if you are bringing into systems that be able to do this, you're using an Encore system or a Spider system, technically they have to be used, you want them to be used by certified engineers as well who understand. They're very complex. I don't even understand them, and I consider myself a pretty techie person, so you want to make sure that you have a certified engineer to be able to do it as well. So there you go. That's video switchers all in kind of a grasp. Again, to recap, you bring in a bunch of different sources, laptops, cameras, graphics, they plug into the system, and then you can decide where they go. You can have very simple ones that go to one single output, like just your projectors, and then you can split it from there and duplicate it. You can sometimes find switchers that allow you to do like a secondary output and an auxiliary, and then when you get to the more crazy intense ones, you have this ability to do 4 or 5 different outputs and where they all go, and you get to just decide and have a lot of fun with those as well. So that's video switchers. I hope you really enjoyed. When you are picking your next quote, just make sure that you're aware of what you need for your content and explain that to the AV company. And they should pick the right switcher for you. But the thing to keep in mind is if the more wants you have, sometimes the more expensive it can get. All right, that's going to be it for all today. I would love to know, though, down in the comments, let's see, what's going to be the question today? Let's talk a little bit about what is the most common video setup that you use for your events. I would love to know, are you primarily doing the duplicate setup, or are you wanting to do the fancier multi-source outputs? I'd love to know down in the comments below so I can have a good pulse to hear from planners and everybody who's watching. What kind of stuff are you guys using on a daily basis? If you loved this video, I would love for you to give it a thumbs up and let us know how we're doing. If you didn't like the video, give us a thumb down, leave a comment down below, how can we do better, and we'd always love to hear. If you really love this video though, smash that subscribe button, ring the bell, and we'd love to see you next time on Whiteboard Wednesday. So subscribe, we publish these every Wednesday. I think I'm gonna get out of here. I'm obviously getting way more technical. I hope you guys have an amazing Wednesday, and we'll see you next time on Whiteboard Wednesday.